All right, it's the Storm Tracker podcast, and today we found out, Frank, that TVD is going to be the starter against North Carolina. So, just wanted to find out, from you, man. I got some thoughts about it. What do you think about TVD starting against North Carolina this Saturday over Jake Garcia?
I mean, I understand the decision. He's got the resume that backs up having a couple of bad games. I think this is going to be the big fork in the road for the rest of the season. Depending on how you play against North Carolina, which is kind of a mid-tier ACC program right now, that's kind of going to give you an idea if we're good enough to play with the Clemsons, the Wake Forests of the world right now, even Syracuse, right? I would probably put Syracuse on a higher total poll than us in the ACC, which is extremely disappointing considering the expectations at the start of the year. But just going back to watch the press conference earlier today over again, it seems like they still have confidence in Van Dyke. There were some things that they need to change, tweaked in regards to the scheme, personnel-wise. The big question is there going to be enough guys, skill position-wise, for TVD to even be successful if he plays a perfect game? No Elijah Arroyo, potentially. You could be missing your top two backs. So I like the idea of having consistency at the quarterback position, and maybe they think it's better to have a guy that's proven himself on high levels in the past. So I understand the decision. I would have loved to see Jake just because of the idea of he's the exciting choice, right? He's the unknown. We've kind of seen what Van Dyke has done this year. So I think the idea of having Jake in there as the confident backup who came in and almost brought us back to a victory would have been fun to see.
Yeah, I personally think it's the right move as well, just because, well, for two reasons. TVD kind of earned the right, I guess you could say, to be the starter based on his performance from last year, and he has seniority over a TVD right now. So as far as just kind of being with the program just a year longer, I think that TVD kind of earns the right to at least give it a shot in this game, because potentially if you put Jake Garcia in this game, then he may not ever relinquish that spot. And then TVD is, kind of the outside guy looking in, never coming back into the game and potentially transferring out. And Jake, I think if he doesn't, play another down for the rest of the season, I still think he sticks with the program here at Miami, and you have that quarterback in waiting. So I think that is part of the strategy. And then the scheme. Hopefully, the scheme really kind of opens up this Saturday against North Carolina, because North Carolina is going to put up some points, man. They're averaging over 40 points a game, and Drake May is looking like TVD of last year. And I think TVD has a chance to really show what kind of quarterback he can be. And like I said before, too, he definitely should use his legs more. I really feel like he should use his legs more uh, in in this game to really produce some first downs.
Yeah, the
I'll be
extension
right
of
back.
plays
I
is
get
going
my
to be.
charger. I don't want this to die on you.
Oh, gotcha. But I totally agree with you. Just because having the threat, and we talked about this before on the podcast, having the threat of the quarterback being that 11th player that the defense has to account for is definitely important. So I totally agree with you. I think that the offense isn't going to change too much team wise. I think Van Dyke really just has to trust his receivers. And I hope that he can kind of right the ship this week, because I really don't want to see a Jaron Williams, Nikosi Perry type situation again, where we're going back and
Right.
forth quarterbacks. Uh, and we want to see TVD be TVD. We want to see the guy that got everybody excited for the 2022 season, and the guy that had the expectations of being in the conversation for national awards. It's still early in the year, really, and we're diving into ACC play now, this is the time to prove it. And this is where he was successful really last year. He didn't really jump in until like, four games into the year. So I think this is an opportunity to see the best TVD possible. I'm kind of glad they got those ugly games out of the way early in the season.
Yeah, how big is this game though, Frank? I mean, this game could be is pivotal. If they lose this game, it doesn't end their season by any stretch, but in the public eye and aesthetically, it will look bad. It will look bad after two disappointing losses. One loss to Texas A&M, a game that you feel you left some plays on the field, and then a complete embarrassment of Middle Tennessee, and then they lose to their first ACC opponent in North Carolina. The fan base is not going to be very forgiving. That's what I kind of worry about with this game. But on the flip side, if you can turn around and win this game, then all of a sudden, everybody's happy about the Hurricanes again, and feeling like they can win the Coastal because this is their first ACC game. So if they win this game, they actually go to the top of the division. If they win the game, because there are no undefeated teams in the ACC, I believe in the Coastal. As of yet, all the undefeated teams are in that Atlantic Division. Now, I remember you talking about Syracuse. Like, Syracuse is a team that I actually think Miami could actually beat. I don't think they've really proven themselves yet that they can really hang with the top level teams in the ACC, who I consider are just Clemson and Wake Forest, to be honest. Every other team in the ACC, I think, is a middle of the road type of team. I even think the teams at the bottom, which we saw last week with Georgia Tech beating Pittsburgh, can beat anybody in the conference except for maybe those top two teams. So this is such a pivotal game for the Hurricanes. It's a prove it moment for this coaching staff and this team to see if they can really hang with the ACC and really have a chance to make it to Charlotte when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I think it's a bigger game for me because we've had so many issues in the past coming out of bye weeks. With Manny Diaz, they were always terrible coming out of bye weeks. And yeah. I think that's one of the big things that we wanted to see a change in the program was preparation in all aspects of the program. And this is just another stepping stone in that development. If you can grab a win out of the bye week and get momentum going, right? I don't think that the expectation or I don't really think right now people are talking about ACC championship play, right? I think you want to get to 8 or 9 wins, have a solid season, and kind of build momentum towards next year, right? Kind of win the games you're supposed to win. And I still think North Carolina is one of those games that they're supposed to win. This is a team that struggled against Appalachian State. Obviously, Miami has had their struggles against lesser opponents so far this year, but still, you have the talent, even regardless of injury, to be able to beat a North Carolina team that's kind of relying on a freshman quarterback that is talented, but not as experienced as Van Dyke. So I think this is going to be a quarterback battle. I think their defense is absolutely atrocious. I think this is a get-right game for the offense. I think Josh Gaddis is still the guy. I am not opposed to the scheme. I don't think there's an issue with the scheme. I think we saw the potential of what the scheme could do with Jake Garcia in there. You can't be gun shy in this offense because the opportunities to go vertical are going to be kind of limited just because of the power run aspect of the scheme. So when those opportunities are there, you got to jump on them. And I think this is a confidence building game for Van Dyke, and I would love to see him get right. And I think this is the perfect moment for it against a subpar defense. First game in the ACC play against an opponent that, we've kind of had some issues with in the past, and they're kind of on the down slope of their trajectory, I guess you could say, in Mac Brown's tenure. So kind of solidifying their self on the totem pole ahead in North Carolina is extremely important.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. North Carolina is a team that has been recruiting on the same level, you could say, as Miami for the past couple of years. So I'm not surprised that they are as explosive as they are offensively. I am surprised at that defense not being able to hold anyone. Um, but I wanted to get an idea from you. What do you think? How many points do you think Miami needs to score in this game to win?
I think they got to hit like 38 plus just to win this game. I don't trust the corners outside of Porter right now. And I think that they have enough speed on the outside to really give us some issues. I think that they still have some offensive skill talent at running back and in the slots to give us some problems with our linebackers. Um, I think they're going to score points. Drake May was one of the top quarterbacks in the country. I believe he was committed to Alabama at one point and flipped to North Carolina because his brother, if you guys are following basketball by any chance, was a big time like March Madness type hero at North Carolina. So he's a really good player. He's a really good player, and we're seeing it so far through the early part of the year. I think this is going to be a shootout, and I think if you can't score points, once again, you're going to have trouble winning in this game. I love Coach Steele. I think his personality shined through in the press conference today. I think that there is definitely a difference in the scheme defensively, and I'm a fan of it. I think the defensive line play has been excellent. I think despite the athletic limitations of the linebackers, they've been, way better than we've seen in the past. And I think that just like Mario said, you're going to have to run man coverage in college football, and the guys are going to have to step up and play. And right now, we're not seeing that. So I'm hopeful that they can get a few stops, maybe a couple of turnovers against the young quarterback. James Williams being opportunistic. We got Cam Kinchins who's playing really good football right now to the start of the year. I think this is going to be a breakout game for Darryl Porter. But I still think that they're going to score some points, probably 30, close to 35 at least. And I think that the offense needs to finally put up some points.
I think Miami has to score like 40 points to win this game, to be honest, because this is a team averaging that much. It's averaging about 42, 43 points a game. So I think Miami has to hit like 45 or so in this game to win. I also think, like you said, turnovers is going to be key. I mean, they got a couple of turnovers this season, the Hurricanes did, but I think they need multiple turnovers to assure themselves of a victory on Saturday. And that's probably going to start with pressure on the quarterback. Can they get pressure on Drake May? I mean, from what I've seen, they were able to protect him really well, especially in that last game against Virginia Tech. And also in that game, they held Virginia Tech to just 10 points, albeit Virginia Tech doesn't have a great offense, but still, you hold any Power Five team to 10 points, then that's pretty good. So yeah, I do think that they do have to score somewhere around 45 points. I mean, but Frank, man, what I fear is that is a game like we saw North Carolina play against Miami. I think it was 2 years ago where they ran up and down the field. It was just a ridiculous rushing assault from what I remember, over 300 yards, and they just couldn't keep up with the Tar Heels. I fear that this is going to be one of those type of games, but sometimes I'm a betting man, Frank, as you know this, and I tend to look at the odds and the line and whatnot, and just to see that this game has Miami favored by 4 is really interesting to me. It really means that they believe that Miami will bounce back after a bye, and I'm a little confused on that as to why they have them as 4-point favorites over a North Carolina team that is putting up over 40 points a game. But I do think Miami has to score like 45 and get 2 turnovers in order for them to win this game, because I think North Carolina is going to be able to move the ball on Miami. Nothing tells me otherwise when they did it against basically every team they played except for Notre Dame, which is the one game that they lost, and they still scored 32 points there. Maybe that could be, the final score of this one. But Miami's going to have to be ready to put some points on the board, and they can't be discouraged if they get down early.
I think the one X factor in this game, and Coach Steele talked about it in the press conference today, was his familiarity with the coaching staff, especially the offensive coaching staff at North Carolina. It's not a complex scheme, and he said that. So I like the idea of Miami being able to control the line of scrimmage. I think that they have the dogs up front to be able to do that. The rotation of the defensive line has been pretty successful so far this year against the run. Maybe not the sack numbers that we would love to see, but I think it's been decent, to say the least. I think linebacker play against the run has been solid. I think the weak link is really just the passing game, just being able to stop the passing game, especially, when Corey Flagg is in coverage. That's something that worries me against those slot receivers. Their number one receiver, I believe, comes back in this game. So we'll see. We'll see if DJ Ivy can have another Texas A&M type performance. We can, Tyreek Stevenson's a little bit banged up. I think this is an opportunity for Daryl Porter to jump in at that spot and earn a lot of snaps moving forward. And I think that Cam Kinchens is going to be huge in this game as the free safety in this defense. So I don't anticipate it being like the North Carolina game a couple of years ago, but I do think it's going to be an exciting game if you like to watch offense.
Yeah, definitely. The Hurricanes have to be opportunistic in this game. They may have to take some risks and try to strip the ball and maybe jump some routes. I know that's probably scary for people to hear because jumping routes usually leads up to big plays. But I think if you don't make an interception or play on the football, of course. But I want to see the Hurricanes really just not give up any big plays in this game, because, looking back at that Middle Tennessee game, Coach Steele kind of said this earlier today that the defense really played well aside from those five big plays. If you take away those five big plays, then Miami probably wins the game. But, woulda, coulda, shouldas don't give you W's. So it's imperative for them, I think, just to not give up the big play, because that will kind of give the team and the people supporting the team in the stadium that here we go again type of feeling. And kind of want to keep the spirits up. And if you can kind of make it similar to a Texas A&M type of defensive performance where you are limiting their big plays, and obviously it's a different type of offense, different type of quarterback. But if you could just limit their big plays and just settle, just live with them getting into the red zone and just kind of take your chances in the red zone, then I think Miami has a good chance to win this game. So yeah, man, we'll see. It should be an exciting one. You want to give a score or not?
I'd say Miami wins 45-35.
Okay. I will go with 45-44. Let's just go
Whoa.
like that. let's just go. I don't know how they're gonna get that 44, but somehow they will. We're gonna go with that. So I wonder what the over under is on that game. You might want to bet the over in this game. But anyways, some unfortunate news that we did hear about the Hurricanes this week is that Arroyo is apparently got banged up on the tight end for Miami, Elijah Arroyo. potentially will be out for this game Saturday. Now we were screaming for Arroyo to get more touches for a few weeks now, and from what we learned today, he was injured in the Middle Tennessee State game, so it could be a reason why we didn't see more of him in that game. So did not get an update from Coach Cristobal when it came to Jalen Knighton, Henry Parrish. The Daryl Porter injury was said not to be serious right after that Middle Tennessee State game, but no update on him either. He's expected to play. So is Tyreek Stevenson and Lou Headley, um, as a result of you know uh, some injuries that they suffered during the game before the game against Middle Tennessee State. Report on CanesCounty.com leading us to believe that they all will be playing on Saturday. But what do you think that impact of Arroyo potentially not playing will have on the Hurricanes?
Oh, I think that hurts, man, because we're already down multiple guys in the receiver room, and he was essentially a jumbo receiver in a lot of different ways. You didn't recruit Elijah Arroyo to be a blocking tight end. He's an explosive player. We've seen him, break 20-yard plays on several different occasions. He's an exciting player, to say the least. And I think he's a real NFL prospect. So losing him in this passing game definitely hurts, especially with the 3 tight end sets that Coach Gaddis loves to utilize. It's going to be a big opportunity for guys like Khalil Brantley and Jaleel Skinner, though, and maybe a get right moment for Will Mallory. We've seen him break out at times, and there have been moments this year where he has not been the Will Mallory that we would love to see, right? There's a reason that Brevin Jordan was so highly regarded and Will Mallory was kind of seen as option B. We want him to jump up and be that alpha in that receiver room right now that is kind of limited. So this is a big opportunity for him. Him and TVD are so close. So this could be a TVD to Mallory type game. I think the biggest loss out of the press conference updates was we're not going to see Restrepo for at least 6 weeks, 6 more weeks. So that's a tough thing to hear. So probably like not until the end of the year. Yeah, it's especially with the way we've seen the passing game go with him out of it. I want Restrepo back in this offense bad. He's the alpha definitively, and also Jacoby George. They said low end 2 to 3 more weeks, high end 4 to 5 more weeks. It's another tough thing to hear. So if you're without arguably the top 2 receivers in this offense for 5+ weeks, they better figure some things out with the guys that are currently in place as soon as this week, right? Because Frank Ladson had a solid performance, but 6 catches for 65 yards isn't always going to cut it. Keyshawn Smith finally had that vertical play that we've been waiting for so long, 39-yard catch from Jake Garcia. He had 4 catches for 81 yards himself. You got to see more of that. You got to see more of that. And you got to see it for a full game. We saw some second half life from some of the receivers. But free Romello Brinson. That's all I'm going to say about that. We need to see more. I've been clamoring for Romello Brinson to be one of the guys utilizing this offense, but instead we're using him as a reverse guy, and that was not even him in high school. Throw it up to the 6'2", 180-pound freak of nature on the outside and let him do his work.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I definitely want to see more of Mello for sure. I definitely want to see some more Brashard Smith in the open field. We need some explosive plays, and we're so lacking on an explosive play. I mean, we had one really explosive play all year. I mean, really, right? The one play to Keyshawn Smith.
You had that Keyshawn Smith. You also had Restrepo had a 50-yard touchdown.
Yeah, that's right.
So since Restrepo has been gone, it's been that 39-yard catch, the 28-yard catch on the wheel to Elijah Arroyo, and that's pretty much it. It's really just been kind of dink and dunk, 14 plus play drives when we do score. You kind of want to see some 4 for 80. You want to see some 5 for 70. Let's make some things happen. Quick drives against this explosive North Carolina offense.
Yeah, definitely want to see that. I definitely want to see some kind of big plays, some explosive plays. Hopefully, Jalen Knighton is okay and he can get back to form. I would imagine he's not 100%. Hasn't really been all year, and I miss him in this offense. I miss really kind of seeing him, being that explosive player in the open field, making guys miss. I mean, the one time you saw a player make a guy miss was that one play, Jacoby George, um, made the guy trip in front of him in the Texas A&M game, but then he tripped over him.
Trying to hurdle him. Should have just went
Yeah,
around him.
exactly. That was like the one play where you saw some playmaking ability in the open field, and it's kind of sad to say that about our Miami team because Miami was always known to have these explosive players. We can have a whole podcast just talking about the explosive players that have played for the U over the years, and now Brashard Smith and Jalen Knighton have to be the guys, right? Like those are the only real explosive players we have on this team, and that's why, yeah, I picked Miami to win, but I'm not betting it, bro. Not betting it at all. I mean,
I think if there's any moment, I think if there's any game where it can happen, it's this one, just because of how lax North Carolina is on defense, right? The limitations that they have. They people score on at will on them. I think there was 60 points scored in that App State fourth quarter game. We're watching it, in the press box, and we were like, there they go again. There they go again. And I think that this is the get right game, like I said before. And I think there's an opportunity there for a lot of guys to build confidence. I think that's the big thing with Brashard Smith. I think Keyshawn Smith, we could see some momentum with him. Yeah, he finally had that game where we saw him utilized as a guy who can be a 20-plus yards per catch type player. And I think that there are guys with the skill set to be successful in this offense, right? There are roles to be played. You have a Frank Ladson who's a big body that can be that possession guy for TVD. You got Brashard Smith that can be utilized as that intermediate to vertical threat. Obviously we want to see more consistency with him catching the football, but he's got that skill set. Keyshawn Smith can be that vertical guy. I think they utilize the bye week to put guys in position in what the scheme asks for. And I think this was a much needed break for this team, especially health-wise.
We're going to need some creativity though, Frank, man, because
my thing, I don't know, Marcus. I think the creativity's there. I think the creativity is there. I think guys are open. But guys are open,
bro. I just watched a full day of NFL football yesterday, and I can't compare the NFL to college football game, but I saw a ton of creativity in a lot of those plays, including the Dolphins game against Cincinnati, which I watched. There was just a ton of creativity, and I was like, why don't I see this with the Miami Hurricanes? And yeah, like I said, NFL, college football is different, but I just don't see the creativity.
I think we're going to see it. I think Josh Gaddis has shown it in the past. I think that he has the scheme to be able to do it. Obviously, this is not like a Texas Tech or a Baylor type offense where they're going to throw the ball 55 times, 60 times, and it's going to be bombs over Baghdad every play. But I think that we have schemed guys open this year. And the utilization of guys in certain roles sometimes hasn't been there, and I think that's where the coaching has lacked, more so personnel than an actual play calling. And I think that this is a game where we're going to see it, right? Because the guys are going to be open again. It's just a matter of, is Van Dyke confident enough? Is he out of his head to be able to utilize his receivers that are open? And I think that we're going to see that. I honestly think this is the get right game. I'm not really worried so much about this. I'm more so worried about like the the Clemsons of the world, right? And I think that you got your scare, right? Early on in the year, you're 2-2.
There's no
This is
way
a
they beat
coaching staff.
Clemson, bro.
I'm not saying that they beat Clemson. I'm saying that I think that they can go through ACC play and still win 8-9 games this year. I'm confident in that. I'm because I think the coaching staff is in place. They're proven to make those things happen. I think they have confidence in their players, and I think that the scheme on both sides of the ball is there. I think it's more so the players executing those plays.
Okay, well, we will see, said the blind man, on Saturday who wins at Hard Rock Stadium, 4 o'clock kick, ESPN2, 560 WQAM. So let's move on to recruiting because, you and I, we love recruiting. And you spoke to a 2023 wide receiver that Miami is looking at the on the West Coast. So just kind of tell me about him.
Tayshawn Lyons, speedster. If you watch the tape, he's very similar to Jaylen Brown. 6'2", 170 pounds. Has been clocked at a 4.44 laser time. He's a long jump state qualifier. He's shooting for 10.5, 10.6 times in track in the 100-meter for the next track season. He's a speedster. He's got playmaking potential as a punt returner, as a reverse guy. Limited route tree in a lot of different ways. Just because it's high school, you don't really see a lot of guys, run the whole tree. But I think that he's a perfect complement to what we already have in the class in Robbie and Ray Ray. And the kid loves Miami. He loves Miami. Him and Jaden Rashada have a previous relationship. So that's another positive development in that recruitment. Frank Ponce was actually at the school last week to meet him personally. So that means they're serious about recruiting him and making him the third receiver in this class. I don't think that he's a guy that comes in and starts right away, but I think he's a high ceiling prospect that brings much needed speed, contested catch ability, and just special teams, upside. That can fill a number of different roles for this team. I think that I wouldn't put a prediction on it right now just because Notre Dame got a recent visit from him. They've been recruiting him really hard. It is quite the trek to get from a kid from California to Florida, but the staff has seemed to do that really well. And I think if Jaden Rashada is pushing for this kid, there's a chance that he ends up in this class.
Well, that's great news about the 2023 class for the receiver group because I was at the American Heritage Cardinal Gibbons game and I had a chance to speak with Brandon Ennis, and Brandon Ennis is arguably the best receiver of the class from down here in South Florida, American Heritage Plantation. And I posted the video on CanesCounty.com and on the YouTube page as well, live from Canes County. And just my feeling of the interview, Frank, is that Miami's going to be they. I don't think they flip Brandon Ennis. It's just my opinion. Of course, things change in recruiting all the time. He may end up flipping to Miami tomorrow. Who knows? Things happen, right? But as of right now, I just don't believe that Brandon Ennis would be flipping to the Hurricanes. I mean, a lot of it does depend on the season and kind of how it turns out. I mean, if by some miraculous feat Miami ends up winning the Coastal and dare I say it, win the ACC, then every recruit or prospect is on the table. But as of now, I just don't feel like based on my conversation with him, I don't think Brandon Ennis is flipping to Miami, and nor do I think Mark Fletcher is as well. I know those are two kids that we're going to continue to cover throughout the season to see kind of what happens with both to see if they indeed sign with Ohio State. But if Ohio State remains in the top five like they are, and a lot of people think that that team is the best team in the country right now. I just do not see it, Frank. I don't see if they're depending on flipping, players. I understand some players they have better chances than others. I think they have a better chance to flip like a Jalen Brown, for example, with that 2023 class, than a Brandon Ennis or Mark Fletcher. However, well, when I did speak to Damari Brown, I started to feel really optimistic about him and his situation with Miami. I think um, it's Miami's to lose with Damari Brown. I think if teams like it seems like Florida State is the closest second right now to his recruitment, and his dad played with Randy Shannon at Miami, and Randy Shannon is over there a part of that Florida State coaching staff right now. So he does have a visit coming up with the Seminoles when they play Clemson. So we'll see how that visit goes and how he feels after that. But right now, I think Miami's is in the driver's seat here. He was supposed to visit in September, so there was some kind of lack of communication between him and the Hurricanes with that visit. He attested to being a lack of a miscommunication, but he does intend to visit for the Miami versus Florida State game. I do think Miami has a really, really great chance to land Damari Brown. I spoke to Damon Fagan as well. They're still actively recruiting Fagan. Still don't have a true safety um, on the 2023 class as of yet. Definitely could be a possibility, but with NC State, I mean that's a team that's you know uh, played toe to toe with Clemson for a good three quarters last Saturday. So it's hard to see that happening as well, but you never know. But I left that game feeling good about Damari Brown, not so good about Brandon Ennis or Mark Fletcher.
Yeah, I'm of the same sentiment. I think that the only way that they get Brandon Ennis or Mark Fletcher is if they finish out really strong. And I think that Mark Fletcher is probably a better chance to end up in this class than Brandon Ennis. I think that if you look at just the development of Ohio State at the receiver position, it's head and shoulders better than pretty much everybody in the country except for maybe like in Alabama. Marvin Harrison Jr. Or Marvin Harrison the third is a kid that's going to end up being a first round draft pick. You know, the Jackson and Njibba kid is going to be a first round draft pick.
Absolutely.
It's 1 year. Every year they got a guy or two that goes first round. So I think that's going to be the tough part about it. The relationship with Brian Hartline. Brian Hartline was down here for the Chaminade game, meaning that they're still pressing. They're not, sitting back and not recruiting him. They know how valuable Brandon Ennis is to this class. I do think that there's a chance Mark Fletcher still flips. I think that they're kind of zeroed in on him as the running back of this class, along with Chris Johnson. So I still think that there's an opportunity there. But the Damian Fagan thing is something to watch, right? Especially because North Carolina State's coaches, and he's in a lot of different rumors for some of the top jobs in the country, the Wisconsins of the world, places like that. So if something like that happens, I could see a potential flip for Damian Fagan. I think Damari Brown is locked into Miami unless Ohio State jumps in. I don't think Florida State has a real shot at landing Damari. I think he's kicking the tires just to see what his options are. Guy Lemonnier is a coach there as well who has a South Florida Express connection to him. And then obviously the connection to Randy Shannon is important as well to his father. But Dad wants him to stay home. I don't think he wants him going to FSU despite Randy Shannon coaching there. And I think that the kid loves Miami. I think he does like the idea of being a Miami Hurricane. I do think he likes the idea of also playing at Ohio State as well, and you cannot blame him for that. Ohio State's also done numbers at the cornerback position. So something to watch there. Ohio State was interested in him after the Chaminade game.
Yeah, he didn't mention anything about Ohio State, but he did also mention Alabama as well. Alabama was a team that he said he may go out and visit. He said he's been in contact with Coach T. Rob, who was a former defensive back coach here at Miami. Now they're at Alabama, so Alabama could be, a possibility for him to visit as well. So he did say that there was no plans to visit Clemson, which I found kind of interesting, um, because he seemed pretty high on Clemson at the beginning of the season. So not sure exactly what happened between him and Clemson, but no plans to visit Clemson at all. And that was the school that he watched growing up as a kid, Clemson. So that was interesting to kind of hear that from Damari Brown. But I mean that's it as far as recruiting is concerned. Miami's still looking to flip some guys. But I did hear that they are actively looking for another linebacker. They're of course looking for at least I heard at least 2 to 3 running backs that they're looking to get in this class. They're trying to get 2 to 3 defensive backs, from what I hear. Those are really kind of the high priority positions at this point. Obviously, you can kind of tell that just by looking at the class and the numbers. But those are the positions of need from what I'm hearing from the team.
Yeah, it's gonna, they're pushing hard for Stanquan Clark over at Miami Central, and a name to watch in recruiting because they are starting to kick the tires on him is Kateris Blue Hicks from
Really?
Miami Central. Speedy receiver. Yeah, Charlie Strong and another coach went to go see him play last week. He did score a big kick return touchdown, had a nice catch along the
Oh, he had a kick
sidelines,
return. Okay.
and a kick return. So
Blue
speed
Hunnets.
is something that I'm sorry.
I said Blue Hunnets.
Blue Hunnets, yeah, Blue Hunnets. There's, I think he was a late riser in recruiting, and Louisville really took the chance and took his commitment early, knowing that something like this might happen, just because he is so explosive. So that's another receiver to potentially watch as a new name on the board. But Stanquan Clark is a guy that everybody in the country is starting to realize is an elite level player. He was at Auburn this weekend. Miami is pushing really hard for him. They're going to try to get him back on campus soon. And yeah, those are 2 names to watch going forward in 2023.
Okay, nice. Katara Six didn't know about that, but the only thing that I worry about that is that he's another small receiver, and to go with Bobby and I'm sorry, Robbie and Ray Ray. It's not the ideal size position, but definitely skill. He's one of the best. I mean, I love watching him play. Always beats his man in man or zone coverage. Finds the soft spots in zone coverage, and he just can catch. The kid can catch, bro. Like yeah, like
And you can't
I
go wrong with
hardly ever
4-3
see him
speed.
ever drop a ball, and a lot of the times those balls are not even in his vicinity, and he's still able to come up with the catches.
Yeah, and you can't go wrong with 4-3 speed. If
Yeah,
you can bring an influx of kids with speed and the potential to be special teams assets as well, those are things Miami needs right now.
yeah, absolutely. All right, so that's gonna wrap it up for the Storm Tracker podcast. Until the next episode.